recording. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We've had a little bit of a break in our PISLAP community calls, but wonderful to renew them now, especially with Riane Eisler kicking us off. We're really happy to have her and happy to have our community coming back together again. So I see there's more and more people joining, but welcome everyone. The way that we usually begin our calls is to go around the virtual room and have everyone identify their location in space. Not a long intro. Perry will explain it. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Perry Sedman, and we'll kick it off. And then we'll be introducing Riane.
Thank you, Nanette. Thank you, and again, welcome to everyone. We have a very nice group today. Welcome back to the community calls. We're going to go around the room. I'm going to call each person individually. If you just say your name and where you are and what you're looking at, and we'll start with you, Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Silvestri. It's so nice to see all of you. Since we last spoke, I moved from Sarasota, Florida, which you may recall I was mentioning all the things happening in Sarasota, Florida. And now I live in New York City. So that's where I'm calling in from.
Great. Good to have you back.
Thank
Duncan?
you.
Duncan, you're next.
So, hello, I'm Duncan Holloman. I am currently in Lincoln, Massachusetts, sitting in my car, but I found a place to pull off the road and I have a reasonably strong signal. So it's good to see all of you, and it's gorgeous weather here.
Great, great. Welcome. Kim Wright.
So Kim Wright in Burlington, North Carolina.
I don't get
Looking out at about 12 different shades of green on the trees outside my window.
Sorry to
If you're
interrupt,
not,
yeah.
if you're not speaking at the moment, could you please mute your speaker? We had a little interference in there. Deborah Sinovic.
It's Deborah Sinovic, but that's pretty close. And I'm in Palm Springs, California, and I'm looking at mountains and sunshine.
Great, good to have you. Craig, you're next.
Hello, Craig Neal. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, on the banks of Bede-Makaska.
Great to have you. Good. Sylvia?
I'm Sylvia Clute in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm looking out my dining room window at a cloudy day.
Okay, good to have you back. Bruce?
I'm Bruce Peterson. I'm in Minneapolis also, looking at clouds and drizzle, but I'm looking at all your happy faces.
Indeed. Jennifer?
Hi, I go by Jenny. I'm in Toronto, and I'm sort of celebrating the end of my teaching career. I'm looking forward to new forms of engagement. I have been teaching at Ascot Hall Law School.
Okay, good to have you. Jacqueline.
Hello. Pardon me. I go by Jackie. I'm also in Toronto, Canada. I'm currently looking just at my office at the Nurses Union where I work.
Catherine, you're next.
Hi, yes, I'm based in London, and the weather is pretty good actually. So it's Earth Day today. So happy Earth Day.
Good to have you with us. Tony?
Hi, I'm Tony Monzi, and I am in Charlotte, Vermont, outside of Burlington, and I'm looking out at a sunny spring day with lots of buds and beginnings of the bulbs blooming.
Good, nice. Kim, you're next. Kim Vanderheiden, yeah.
Hi, I'm Kim Vanderheiden. I am in Oakland, California, and I am looking around at my art studio.
Twyla, you're up. Unmute yourself, dear, so we can hear your voice. Can't hear you, Twyla.
I'm trying. Is that better?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. I'm in Austin and it's a really soft, pretty, cloudy spring day.
Nice. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Libby?
Hi, I'm looking out over the park on a cloudy day in Denver, and the Starbucks employees are here, and the city of Denver is handing out rakes and shovels and garden gloves for their Earth Day volunteering.
Very good. And Bruce, you're next up.
Hi, Nanette invited me because we're friends and I'm an old friend of Riane. So I have not seen Riane in maybe 15 years or so. And I haven't seen you, Perry. I know you from FEM events. I'm thinking so dearly of Peter Gable, who became a close friend at the very end of his life, and seeing his spirit through this group. So I just needed to mention that. I'm in a laundry room because I'm staying with a friend, so I don't see any weather. I was on the patio, but I had no reception out there. So I had to move down to the laundry room so not to disturb my friend. So nice to be here.
Nice to have you. Brad, you're up.
Hi everyone, Brad Roth. I'm in New York City, and I'm looking at my sleepy little puppy, our sleepy little puppy who's sleeping on the couch here. Thankfully, oblivious to all and not barking. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Jakes. I'm Peter Gable's partner. I am in a strip mall in Pleasant Hill, California, where one might think there are only strip malls, but in fact, Peter used to teach here at JFK Law School, and I found a shady spot to park in to listen today. Thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure, as always. Eileen, you're next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm Eileen Barker. I'm in San Rafael, California. I also used to teach at JFK University. And I'm really just looking at my screen right now. Happy to be here. Really excited for this, Riane. You're sort of a legend in my life after reading Chalice and the Blade. And when I found out that Kim actually knew you, which is quite a while back, that was thrilling to me. So happy to be on this call.
Good to have you. Michelle?
Michelle Keith?
Well, Michelle Leering, how's that?
Okay, sorry.
It's all right.
Okay.
You're next.
Sorry. And apologies for not having my camera on, but it's not working. So I'm in Kingston, Ontario, and a settler on the land of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people. And I'm looking out at daffodils and hyacinths in my backyard. And I'm super glad that I didn't miss them when I was away for 4 weeks. So it was a joy to see them this morning when I got up. Thank you.
Terrific. Great. Now, Michelle Keith, you're up.
Hello, my name is Michelle Keith, and I'm here from Massachusetts. It's an absolutely glorious day here. The cherry blossoms are in bloom, and the hummingbird migration map is reporting that the hummingbirds are now in Massachusetts. So we're really excited about that and looking forward to seeing them. And I just would like to say thank you so much to Riane and the group. I'm looking forward to hopefully more blue skies ahead, especially with developing the ethic of care, for our world. Thank you very much.
Welcome, and welcome to the group. Rand, are you there?
Yes. Hold on. Where's my here I go. Yes, I'm here. I'm in Philadelphia. We had a gorgeous day yesterday. It's raining today. I am really pleased to be here and hear what Riane has to say. I'm very, very interested in your work. Thank you so much.
Good to have you, Rand. Ms. Loftus, your first name is not spelled out.
Hi, good to be here. I'm Christina Loftus, also joining from Austin, Texas. That's my first opportunity to join this group, and excited to hear our speaker. Yes, just really glad to be here.
Welcome to the group.
Yes, thank you.
And
Thank you.
That's 2 people from Austin so far. And who hasn't Who have I not called on?
I'm Julie. Oh, sorry.
No, Julie Oxenberg. Go
Yes,
ahead.
Julie Oxenberg. I'm sorry I can't be on camera right now, but I'm here in Gloucester at the moment. I have the great privilege of being able to see the ocean out my window a little bit. And Riane, your ideas have just really influenced my thinking a tremendous amount and my writing. So I'm so grateful and looking forward to this talk. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. And Lee, you're next.
Hi, Lee Stallings. I'm coming in from Saratoga Springs, upstate New York. And I feel like I've been away for a long time. And so it's really, really good to be back with everybody.
Nice to have you. Let's see. There's somebody. Oh, Ann Friedman. Ann?
Here from Philadelphia and glad to be with everybody.
Glad to have you. Sharani, say your
Hi.
name and where you are and what you are looking at.
Sorry, I haven't got my camera on because it is very late at night. It's 10:30 in my home in the moment. And I haven't put my, oh, have I put my hand up? No, I haven't. Okay, so I'm fine. How are you keeping?
We're terrific and glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Sharani, do you want to tell us where you're calling in from? That's what we were doing, is going
Oh,
around.
from
and
Sri
people-
Lanka. I'm calling in from Sri Lanka. I'm sorry. I just managed to, because I was on at 10 o'clock and something was happening with the times. So then I started another meeting, which I had to finish off with my juniors. I just finished and I came on again. I thought, okay, it's not on today. Something's wrong with it. And now I'm so glad to be on today. Thank you.
Good to have you. Wow.
Yeah.
The
Sorry,
magic
I
of
think we
Zoom.
missed Laura Stoner.
Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Stoner DeLavi here in Richfield, so Minnesota. Good to see you, Craig, and I'm super excited to be here to hear Riane speak. It's been 2017 when I took the partnership program and participated in some additional sessions with Riane and the group in a couple years after that. So excited to hear new updates.
Terrific. Good to have you with us. Who have I missed? Okay.
I guess myself, Perry. Hi, everyone. Nanette Shore. I'm here sitting in my office in a legal services office in the Bronx and looking out on the George Washington Bridge. And it's wonderful to be here and see all of you.
And I am Perry Sedman. I am sitting in my living room in Washington, D.C. In honor of Earth Day, I went out yesterday and bought 12 perennial flowers, which I'm also looking at out my window. And I want to invite all of you who might not have officially joined PISLAP to take a look at our website, which is spiritlawpolitics.org, and sign up and be an official member of our progressive group. I'm going to turn it now back over to Nanette, who will introduce Bonnie, who will introduce our speaker.
Well, actually, thank you very much, Perry. I think Kim is going to Kim Wright is going to introduce Riane, and then Bonnie will kick things off.
Oh, okay. Very good.
So Kim, over to you, and thank you.
So I didn't realize what a hard job I had taken on. Introducing somebody should not take an hour and a half, which I think to do it justice would take at least that. So I'm just going to kind of mention a few things. I could talk about her early years, very early years, leaving Austria, fleeing from the Nazis and going to Cuba, her time in Southern California as an entertainment lawyer. Or I could talk about how she contributed to my second book, Lawyers as Changemakers. I was always impressed that she's although also distressed, that she's the only woman among 20 major thinkers that was recognized for the lasting importance of her work. So of 20 great thinkers, Riane Eisler was the only woman. She's also been recognized as a peacemaker, along with Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Martin Luther King, and the great peacemakers. And but I think I want to tell you about going to her house in 2017 and how warmly she and David welcomed me. And I think there were tea and cookies, but there was certainly no chit chat. She was working, and I went into her office and I was immediately working with her. She said she had Chuck Schumer's office on the line, and she was talking to them about taking a caring and partnership approach to politics. And over the last few months, I've been hearing the echoes of that in the news and when I hear the Democratic Party statements. And so it gave me just a little bit of a sense of her lasting impact over decades of commitment and her life's work, and just my admiration for her and her wisdom and commitment. So I think that the things she talks about and the things that she has been doing her whole life are just near and dear to my heart, and I think to PISLAP's collective hearts as well. And I'm so glad she's here. Welcome, Riane Eisler.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. And it's really a pleasure to be with you all. And I love the introductions. And I'm raring to go and tell you a little bit more about me, but I'll wait for Bonnie.
Hi, Riane. I'm so delighted to get to meet you. I've heard all about you from Kim for many, many years. The concept of care is so important to me, and I can talk to you about that later, but I'm so glad to get the opportunity to share your words with this whole group. So you had mentioned that you wanted to talk a bit about how you were drawn into your work, and then you put "and your calling." And I just absolutely love that, because I feel that the calling is really what has drawn so many of us together into PISLAP, and that sort of longing for connection is really kind of how we all came together. So it would be wonderful to hear from you. You've had, such an incredible career. There's so many things that we could talk about, but we would love to hear sort of how you came to do the work that you do and to become such a giant in your field.
Well, thank you. And Kim mentioned that I was a child refugee with my parents from the Nazis, and really my passion for my work, which I started really with 2 books that drew from my legal experience, Dissolution, which the subtitle is No Fault Divorce, Marriage, and the Future of Women, and which predicted what later became known as the feminization of poverty. Because while no-fault divorce is a very fair law, unfortunately, it does not operate in a fair, level playing ground. And then I also am the author, drawing directly from my legal background, of the Equal Rights Handbook on the ERA. And unfortunately, that book predicted that if ERA failed, if it was the first time really that a constitutional amendment that broadened protection to no less than half the population, women, was denied, that we would see a massive regression. And that's exactly, of course, what we're seeing, the climax, I hope, of today, and I hope we will see the denouement of it. And then I had these questions that really stem from my childhood. Does it have to be this way? When we humans have such an enormous capacity for caring for sensitivity, for creativity. Why has there been so much insensitivity, cruelty, destructiveness? And of course, the normative stories, whether it's original sin or selfish genes, tell us, well, too bad. That's just human nature. That, my friends, is a false story. And I'll go quickly to the last book that I wrote that was published. The title of the book is Nurturing Our Humanity, and the subtitle is How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains, Lives, and Future. And that book draws not only from all of the social sciences, but from the biological sciences, and very heavily from neuroscience. And it completely debunks that assumption, as well as the nature-nurture argument. It isn't nature or nurture, it's nature and nurture. And the evidence is very clear. Of course, we have the capacity for these negative, cruelty, etc., but it very heavily hinges, and I think you probably know this, on what children first observe and experience in their first years. And so we're back to what is left out of most studies, which is one of the cornerstones of either what I call domination or partnership systems. And it's a scale. It's the partnership domination social scale. And I'm trying to cram in a lot to give you a sense of what my work is about, because my work is very multidisciplinary. And what I saw right away, having been a feminist, obviously the first two books were written from the perspective of, the people who are left out, right? Women and children who are either marginalized or ignored, not only in most studies, but in all of our categories that we inherited, actually from more rigid domination times, right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, capitalist, socialist. They all marginalize or ignore nothing less than the majority of humanity. So I saw right away that I could not do this study through the lenses of conventional approaches or social categories. And to make a long story short, and I'll quit with this short and nonlinear introduction in a moment, of what I identified through my multidisciplinary, trans-historical, cross-cultural study are two underlying configuration, the domination system or the partnership system. And yes, I have also introduced what I call the partnership domination biocultural lens. And that's in this last book, in Nurturing Our Humanity. But there are patterns, and that is something that we're not taught. We're taught in law school. And that's really interesting because, we're taught, and that helped me too. I mean, I sometimes say that my life is like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle coming together. And law school and law, a client doesn't just come into your office and say, would you please apply section 1222 of the blah, blah code to my case? Tell the story. She says this and that, and then it's up to us to see the patterns, right? So that had a lot to do with my developing a new methodology, the study of relational dynamics. And it looks at two primary dynamics. One, what kind of relationships, because it's all about relationships, isn't it? What kinds of relationships does a particular social system support or inhibit? And two, what is the relationship between the key components of a social system. And what I found out is that if we leave out the majority of humanity, we're also leaving out family. And so the first component of either a domination or partnership system is not only social structure, not only economic structure, but family structure. Because that's when our first socialization takes place. Second, gender. If we leave out gender, we're leaving out not a quote women's issue, although certainly it has been, or a quote men's issue, you know, as we're finding out from men's studies, but we're leaving out a fundamental family, social, and economic organizing principle. And I can't emphasize this enough because it's so alien to what we're taught. I mean, even gender studies, which is, you know, women's studies, it's only, or men's studies, it's only about 60 years in the academy, and it's totally marginalized. But actually, and this takes me to, well, I've identified really some cornerstones, and one of them is, of course, family and childhood. The other one is gender. The other one is economics, but going beyond capitalism and socialism to really a caring economics of partnerism. I mean, economics is about what we value and what we measure. And we measure what we value, and we are not measuring, especially in our post-industrial knowledge service age, the most important, which even economists who live in some alternate reality tell us is the most important capital, human capital. And whether we have this high quality human capital that they keep talking about largely hinges on this quote women's work, doesn't it, of caring for people starting in childhood. And the fourth cornerstone is story and language. But you can find out all of this by reading my books, my articles, by going to our website. But the last thing that I want to say, and I know I'm just filling you with all kinds of information here, let's look at some domination societies. The Taliban, fundamentalist Iran, you know, Eastern religious societies. Look at the rightist fundamentalist alliance in the United States, the Western religious society. But let's look at a society that's a mixture of secular and religions. Putin's Russia. They all emphasize, or let's look at Hitler's Germany or Stalin's former Soviet Union. Strangely enough, they all really emphasize rigid gender stereotypes. And you know that Putin, to give you an example of the commonality of these, which in terms of the conventional categories are very, very different, aren't they? What they have in common, Putin in 2018 substantially reduced the penalty for family violence. Now, why would he do that? Because Putin recognizes, like all of these regressive to domination regression, okay? Because it's dominator fundamentalism that we're talking about. It's not religion. Why would he do that? He recognizes the integral connection, which my work shows, between a highly punitive, often violent, rigidly male-dominated authoritarian family and that kind of a state. So we have to do the same. And I think I'll stop here for sort of station identification here.
I'm sure there's many people who have questions and thoughts, but maybe I'll just start by saying What do you think is the reason that we're now kind of coming up against this again? Like, I think that so many people are saying, you know, I thought we already fought all of this, the idea that Dobbs, we've been wanting to discuss Dobbs in PISLAP for a long time. And sort of what, and you're the perfect person for us to address it with, but how did we get to where we are right now? And you sort of talked about it as possibly the climax. These are things that you predicted in some of your work and that maybe we're reaching a climax. So I think that, you know, you're the perfect person to talk to us about how we can move forward from this and what role some of us could play in making changes.
Well, first of all, as attorneys, you have a major role to play. And I invite you really to consider what I am going to be launching, which is a campaign to end family violence, not domestic, because domestic immediately, you know, you say violence to people, right? And they think of war, they think of terrorism, maybe crime. But somewhere or other, they don't think of family violence, okay? And as a matter of fact, and I've written a great deal about this, and one of the articles, by the way, that I sent to Nanette appeared in the Cambridge University book, which 5 people read, you know, I mean. But the thing about it is that it is an important article, and you can play a role in seeing that the Rome Statute, which does not include women and does not include children under crimes against humanity, even though, as this article shows, the institutionalized systemic violence against women and children worldwide is horrendous. And it really starts in the family, because what do children learn in a family where they either observe or experience violence? They learn that violence by those who are bigger and stronger against those who are weaker is not only normal, I mean, it normalizes it, but moral. So can you immediately see why Putin would do what he did? It makes a lot of sense once you use this new paradigm and leave behind the old categories. Now, to get to your question, why now? My work, as those of you familiar with Chalice, for example, which, by the way, is now in its 57th US printing and something like about, I think by now, 30 foreign editions. It's still very much relevant. And as I mentioned in that book, my work draws heavily from chaos theory, from nonlinear dynamics, from system self-organizing theory, which are the theories that are applicable, science tells us, to complex living systems. And societies are certainly complex living systems. And you have to, I mean, linear causes and effects are very important, but they don't really tell us the information that we need. It is interconnection, mutual support of core elements that makes the difference. And I see Bonnie shaking her head, yes. And I think that you as attorneys, number one, can, and I repeat this, can play a role in seeing that the Rome Statute is challenged. And I would love to do this, and I'll be a consultant to it if something that you want to do. But at the same time, also on this campaign to end family violence, we're trying to engage religious leaders in particular. Why? Because most people in the world identify with some religion or other. Dalai Lama, the Pope. So if you have any thoughts on how to connect with any of them, that would be important. But getting back to chaos theory, nonlinear dynamics, self-organizing theory, what it tells us is that in periods of systems, of massive systems disequilibrium, like the shift from the agrarian to the basically manufacturing. I mean, not that we stopped farming, but the percentage of the population doing farming shrank from, over 80% to about 8%, So now we're in the throes of the shift of another period, but much quicker, of massive disequilibrium, shifting to the from the industrial to the post-industrial knowledge service age, AI, etc. And so what you're seeing is this polarization between those trying to push us back towards more rigid domination and those of us who in bits and pieces are trying to move to a more equitable, sustainable, peaceful world. And that is the reason that this regression, but also if you read Nurturing Our Humanity, you'll see that people who are socialized, starting in families, economic domination economics creates artificial scarcities and hence traumas. Dominator families create traumas. I mean, the fact that we're beginning to talk about trauma is a partnership trend, isn't it? I mean, you have to really look at this from a whole systems perspective. So what we're seeing, of course, is the domination system coming to its logical end, because really, whether it's the conquest of people, and the domination of people, or the conquest and domination of nature, as in climate change, the mix of high technology with an ethos of domination is taking us to what we see all around us, an evolutionary dead end. So that's why we're seeing what we're seeing today. And people always ask me, well, are you optimistic? And frankly, I think that's beside the point. It's an existential commitment. I mean, I have this existential commitment, this passion, and I am convinced that human creativity is such that we can create a better future, a more partnership-oriented future. But to do this, we need both short-term tactics, like the environmental movement and the domestic violence movement and the women's movement and the men's movement and, all of the racial movement, all of these movements, but we also need long-term strategies. And these I outline, as I said, with these 4 cornerstones. So again, I'll pause, having given you a ton of information, but I see from your faces that you are understanding this, and I love that, because what it starts with changes in consciousness. That's what really is the difference. And that leads to action, and then that leads to more changes in consciousness and institutional changes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, I think we're kind of a good group to talk to about this, because that's been so much of the various community calls we've been doing and the direction that we want to go. And I see Jenny has her hand up, and I just have been thinking about the connection of your work. So I'm happy you were the first to ask a question. Jenny.
Thank you. Yeah, so I know your work from a long time back, but I recently published a book called Part-Time for All. It's why everybody should do care work. But you can't do that unless you shift the work structure. And I cite one of your articles in there. But right now, listening to you about this, the rise of domination of both nature and people, I wonder if you have something to say about what to do about the fear. because I think sometimes there's an illusion that the domination model provides stability. You know, equality is a shifting, movable, not fixed thing. It creates fluidity and creativity, and I think that for some people that looks scary. It doesn't look as secure as a domination model. You know, a pyramid is very stable, a hierarchy.
Absolutely. And I think you've put your finger on it. In my book, Sacred Pleasure, which I really recommend to all of you, the subtitle is Sex, Myth, and the Politics of the Body, and it foreshadows a lot of my later books and thinking. But I point out that domination systems are held together by fear of pain. Fear of pain, as in God-fearing, right? I mean, pain from those up top. Whereas the partnership system, and strangely enough, we see it in one of our closest primate relatives, the bonobos, are more held together by pleasure, but not fun, you know, this crazy escape, right? Or the adrenaline rush from, you know, all of these so-called epics and heroes and Superman, but real pleasure. And, you know, we know that the greatest pleasure humans have comes neurologically. We get endorphins when we love, when we care. So it's our job to really show that this human yearning for connection, you know, we don't survive without some care. I mean, when we're born helpless, for goodness sakes. This is built into human evolution. So when in the real Wealth of Nations, which again, I highly recommend because along with so many of my articles, and by the way, we have a journal, the Interdisciplinary Journal, as Kim mentioned, of Partnership Studies which is housed, it's an online peer-reviewed free access journal. And there are many articles, including one that I think is very important in our inaugural issue about some new metrics that we have developed. We launched them in 2014, very ad hoc, the social wealth economic indicators, which show the economic value, for goodness sakes, of caring for people starting at birth and caring for our natural life support systems, our Mother Earth, you know, gender again, right? Rather than exploiting her and owning her. I mean, it's all of one piece, isn't it? Once you have the right frame. So I hope this partially answers your question, Jennifer, but it really, people who are socialized to accept domination system and gender. I mean, what does this, first of all, these rigid gender stereotypes with certainly no, you know, there have always been people in between, but somehow we ignore this, right? And the ranking of male over female, what does it do for domination systems? Why is it so important? You know, once you step back, you see it. It starts with how we think of the most fundamental difference in form in our species between female and male. And if you internalize that, rigid roles, rigid gender stereotypes, and the male and masculine, right? This rigid gender stereotype over female and feminine, quote unquote, like caring, caregiving, nonviolence, you get it because what you're internalizing is to equate difference with superiority and inferiority, with dominating or being dominated, with being served or serving. And so you get something that is integral to domination systems, which is in-group versus out-group thinking and acting, whether it's racial, whether it's, it doesn't really matter. you know, whether it's a different race or a different gender. And we're not talking about biological sexual differences here. We're talking about cultural, you know, and gender fluidity is alien to domination systems. Anyway, I hope that answers your question to some extent. But the books that I have mentioned are really have much more detailed answers.
Thank you.
So Laura Stoner Delavie has her hand up.
I can't hear you, Laura.
I think she's trying to unmute.
There you go. Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Riane, I've really been like, there's so much of what you're talking about that has been just on top of my mind, in my heart, over the last several months. And one of the things that I've been struggling with is this connection to religion and ways of thinking. And so you said change starts with changes in consciousness. And I've been writing a bit about how our beliefs drive our behaviors. And one of the questions I often hold is, what is the sort of the thing that will make a crack in people's conscious, like just in general, right? That sort of crack in their current way of thinking that will begin to help evolve and start that shift in consciousness. And I ask because it's like, especially in this place of polarization, it just seems like it's stuck in stone. And I know that our consciousness is can evolve. And so I'm like, I just would love to hear what you think that crack might be, so that we can kind of go and help to make it bigger.
Laws can be a crack. Changing laws. And we saw that in Brown versus Board of Education, that it opened things. But this said, this is where we really come back to the short-term tactics and the long-term strategies. And the long-term strategies have to focus on family, childhood, gender, economics, and story language. Because those pushing us back do. I mean, look at what's happening in the so-called red states about family, about gender. I mean, those are priorities, for goodness sakes. And the fact that they identify with those on top who are called the job creators, or the stories, I mean, God-fearing, right there, you have the story right there. I am focusing primarily, and I want to tell you this, on progressives, because we're all over the place. And that's short-term tactics, and that's fine, and it has to continue. But we also need a long-term strategy, because trust me, whether it was the Taliban, whether it was fundamentalist Iran, whether it was the rightist fundamentalist alliance in the United States, they have long-term strategies. And they have been changing the normative ideal for family, for gender. I mean, think about it for a moment. What have they focused on? We need to do this. And I really feel very, very strongly that there are some people, frankly, who are hermetically sealed by the pain, I mean, of their childhood, like Mr. Trump, for example. I mean, we know that his father was a terrible dominator. We know that his mother was a non-entity in that family, was ignored, devalued. We know that he was sent to military school. I mean, right there, you've got the training to fit into domination systems. So let's focus on a new paradigm. on using the domination partnership scale. Because if we don't see the commonalities, we're going to continue to be fragmented and all over the place. And I don't have a magic wand. I really don't. I think that there are those, once the normative ideals, once we shift them through law, through religious sermons, you know, through the media, okay? Those are, you know, story language, remember, is a huge cornerstone. And we are slowly, but only in bits and pieces, changing the story. And the object is not who's on top and who's on bottom. You know, I'm just changing that. And I worry about that because that's not the point. It's changing the system. And we know from prehistory the configuration of Çatalhöyük, for example. It was no signs of destruction through warfare for over 1,000 years. Ian Hodder, one of the archaeologists, wrote an article in the Scientific American, for example. And when he was interviewed for a film that's being made about my life and work, he said it was the Gaelic society. Being born female or male didn't affect one's status and position in life. And it was more generally egalitarian. So you have the configuration, don't you? Because why is there less violence? Because there is some violence in partnership systems, but it doesn't have to be built into the system to maintain these rigid rankings of domination, man over man, man over woman, race over race, religion over religion, humans over nature. So I hope that answers your question. It was a long-winded response, but you know, on one level, this is all very simple. Look at the basic components that people pushing us back are focusing on and really understand that we're talking about this domination, partnership, social scale.
I was thinking about what you said about the long-term strategy and that there was sort of the movement to take us back from Roe in place for 50 years. So that long-term strategy and how we have to have that long-term thinking and short-term strategy.
And really, it's been very difficult to get foundations to fund our work. So I will make an appeal for funding to you for the Center for Partnership Systems, because our work is that work of changing consciousness, changing paradigm. And that's not something that most foundations, you know, they are very specific and they're not systems oriented. So I will make this appeal. I'll also appeal to you to look at this paper that Nanette, and see what you can do with the Rome Statute. And we absolutely must have trainings for family court on this new paradigm. And we do have a tool. We have 2 tools, by the way, that you can download for free, but we do consulting on them. One is the Caring and Connected Parenting Guide in English and Spanish. Very short, based on the latest neuroscience. And the other, there are 2 of them. We got a small grant from the Ford Foundation to develop a partnership technology toolkit. And we have, it's too long, so we have shortened it and condensed it. And it's the one with people on the cover. And it's the partnership toolkit, and it's a self-assessment tool. And it is something that can be used as part of a training for family court members because children are still, I mean, there's a lot of bias in family court. I don't have to tell you that. Any of you who work in family court, one of our board members, Galen Curtis, is a whiz at family law. And she is so disgusted with the whole system because not all of the judges, but a lot of them still exhibit a lot of, well, the cultural bias, right? Male superior, female inferior, believe the man, not the woman. And this has nothing to do with anything inherent in women and men. And I really should end with that because David, my late husband, was not only brilliant and debunked the story of Darwin, you know, as what he called the 800-pound gorilla to maintain domination systems, David Lloyd, but he was a very caring man. So men can be caring and women cannot be caring. It is a social systems dynamic.
So we do have 3 more questions. I'm going to go to Kim because I saw her hand up first and she's an artist, so I would love to hear her thoughts.
Well, my comment doesn't have as much to do with art as another organization that I'm part of, and I'm bringing this up because of the question about the crack in consciousness and that religion has come up, and what is the long-term strategy. And there's this other group that I'm part of called Pax Christi. That's a progressive Catholic organization. And they've been working for a long time on working with the Vatican to promote gospel nonviolence, which is that there was nothing taught in the gospel that wasn't nonviolence. It's all nonviolence. There's no justification for any battle, for any violence, for any war, nowhere in the gospel, nothing that was taught. In fact, it was all taught to the contrary. And so they've been working with the Vatican on this, and language from Pax Christi, I've seen it start coming out in the Vatican documents. And I just want to bring up with you, when you're talking about, well, how do we reach the Catholic Church? Pax Christi is an organization that is progressive enough to understand what you're saying, to have some of the consciousness that you're talking about already, and they're already working on long-term strategies about violence. And so I wanted to share that. And also I'm wondering if part of that crack, I mean, I think actually there's probably a bunch of cracks that need to happen. One is in Christianity and how we talk about, you know, because Christianity has such a domineering kind of domination system built, you know, that's been used. Maybe this gospel nonviolence is part of a crack in that particular framework.
Absolutely, Kim. But notice that you're saying that they're focusing on the violence that most people, you say the word violence, and what do they think of? War, terrorism, maybe crime. They do not think of family violence. And I have written several papers. Why don't you get in touch with me? And Nanette has my email. And let's work with Pax Christi to have them make the connection that Putin made, for goodness sakes. I mean, if they can make the connection intuitively, surely we can learn to make the connection and have that aha moment.
I think that I could work with you on that, and that I can, you know, there's people in the organization I can connect with.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
So the next person whose hand is up is Bruce Novak, your friend. Bruce,
Thank you. And it's just so good to be in the room with Riane, who was my friend for many years, but haven't seen for such a long time. So it's really taking me back. As a philosopher and educator, I'm just trying to think of what could I possibly contribute to this group of lawyers. Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, maybe I'll just leave.
There was one.
Is this better now? Is this okay?
Yeah, this is better.
Yeah.
And I thought she has this wonderful new book coming out that I think captures the partnership philosophy. And it's called the beauty of equality. That is, that it's not just that we have equal rights given by nature, it's that diversity enriches us and domination impoverishes us and is ugly. And that might be just one very simple idea that lawyers can keep at the back of your minds as you're arguing cases to judges and to juries, that this idea of partnership gives us happiness, and the idea of domination gives our natural loving selves sadness. So if you could use that one little idea, the beauty of equality, not just the right to it, but the beauty of it, to take into your work, I just want to leave you with that as the connection to, what Biden calls the soul of democracy, but hasn't done a good enough idea of bringing it across to people at this point. So thank you.
Thank you. Lisa had her hand up, but I don't know if we lost her connection.
No, she's here.
Okay, good. Lisa?
But you still have your mic off, Lisa.
You're muted. No, she's saying no.
Oh,
Oh, wait, does this work? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, amazing. My phone makes it very difficult. Thank you. Well, I decided not to ask one question, and now I have two questions. One, if you're interested, you might be interested in Peter Gable's last book, The Desire for Mutual Recognition, which talks a lot about human connection, and which he felt could help us build a better world where violence wasn't the first step in resolving any issues. But also, I'm hearing that you think we're going to survive the climax of domination. And I don't know why you think that, but I like that you think it. And I wondered if you could say why, if that's a fair question.
Well, as I said, people ask me if I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I have an existential commitment to this. I have a passion for it. And it really does go back to the traumas of my childhood. So I believe in human creativity. And I believe, as I wrote in The Chalice and the Blade, which I still recommend as a good entry point into this work, by the way, because it foreshadows so much. I believe that we humans are very creative. Look, everything around us, we created. The desk, the mic, the chair, but we also created our cultures. And so since cultures are human creations, we can recreate them with the knowledge, however, that we have lacked of this configuration of the partnership and domination systems. And the old social categories, we really need to retire those, because this whole argument between capitalism and socialism, for example, is a red herring. Of course we need markets. We don't happen to have a free one. And of course we need enlightened government policies. But as I said, economics is about what we value and what we measure. And this is why we started to develop social wealth economic indicators to show the value of the work of caring for people starting at birth and caring for our natural life support system, our Mother Earth. So, and both Marx and Smith, although they both challenged traditions of domination, perpetuated this system because they came out of the 1700s and the 1800s, more rigid domination times. And for them, the work of caring for people was to be done for free by a woman in a male-controlled household. And as for the work of caring for nature, there is nothing in either socialist or in capitalist theory about caring for nature. I mean, these are look, 1700s, 1800s, they would be at the beginning of the industrial age, early industrial days. They'd be antiquated, but this hidden system of gendered values is a huge flaw in both these theories. So why do I have optimism? Because we can learn, we can change, and at least some of us can change. And I believe that if we have both short-term, tactics, which we have, but we also focus on these long-term strategies, we have a chance. So that's all I can tell you.
We have one more question from Tony Monsi.
Hi, thank you for taking my hand. I'm actually just going to post something in the chat, and thank you, Riane, and everyone for those. And since we brought up Peter Gable's mutual recognition book, I just wanted to, I've talked to Nanette and Lisa both about a practice called wanting that could be called a mutual recognition practice. It is a partnered meditation practice that if you're curious, I'll put this in the chat and you can learn more about it. But I think it is one of the it's a short-term and a long-term tactic to how do we shift our consciousness. It's not an easy feat. I'm a psychologist by training and spiritual director by training. So not totally in this paradigm, but for my own personal and life story is why I'm here in the more law and political side. But just want to share this opportunity and would love to have any of you that might have questions or be curious to contact me by email or to join us for an open wanting session to just experience what's it like to mutually recognize one another, or what's one way to do it. So I just wanted to put that out there as an offering to all of you. We'd love to, and I'm grateful to be here to help participate in how do we do this? Because I do believe we can.
I believe Bruce had a question.
Duncan seems to have a question.
Oh, Duncan. I'm sorry.
Duncan.
So first of all, thank you so much. And I just want you to know that I so completely agree with this whole notion of care. But I've been thinking about what hurdles we have to face. And I'm really struck by the work of Jessica Benjamin here about the roles of doing to and being done to. And I think part of the dominating cultural mode is not only dominating, but it's being a victim of those that dominate. And I think part of what is so difficult here in creating partnerships is that caring has more control in it than being cared about. And so it's much more frightening, I think, to be vulnerable to the degree that you're being cared about. And that's part of the mutuality of caring is allowing yourself to be cared about. And I just wonder if you could speak to some of that.
Well, thank you, Duncan. I think that part of male socialization is, you do get emotions in domination, gender stereotypes. As men, you get anger and contempt. But as for the soft, so-called feminine emotions, like fear, like tenderness, and yes, like saying, I need help, that is off bounds. And so I think that you're dealing with a very deeply ingrained notion of, quote, masculinity. And which both women and men have internalized, okay? Women are very complicit in this. Look at all the women. See, because in domination systems, and Mr. Trump said this, he said, there are only two alternatives. You either dominate or you're dominated. And care is for weak sisters, right? For girly men. And so, and he said it's all about domination, Trump. That is really baked into him. And I bring him up only because he's so symbolic of what's happening. hits a chord in the socialization, in, if you wish, the brainwashing of part of our population. And that's why I think long-term strategies are so important, and really paying attention to gender. Because we see how many men are doing care work today, you know, in the ways, I mean, diapering babies, feeding babies, you know, the feminine, despised work, if you will, not manly. So it isn't a biological thing at all. It's learned. And maybe women are less likely to learn violence, although God, goodness knows there are, you know, I mean, the spanking, for example, is largely carried on by women as agents of the domination system, as in, wait till your father gets home, right? So gender is a very, very basic family, social, and economic organizing principle. And I think that's what this is about for many men as well as women, that, you know, it's this stereotype. And it deprives, of course, men of their part of their humanity. It certainly deprives women as part of their humanity, but more women are reaching leadership positions, and more men are doing caring. And in the future, I hope that a lot of these stereotypes won't be baked into us. That's part of the long-term strategy. So I hope that answers part of your question, Duncan, and thank you. I mean, I just want to add one thing. Men, if you really think about it, have not had a very, I mean, yes, they have some privilege in families and in society, but, you know, if some guy on top wants more real estate like Putin, men have to give nothing more, less than their lives. I mean, think about that. I mean, domination systems are not exactly a panacea for men, are they?
It's 2:15. Let's take one last question from Sharani, who just raised her hand.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Shirani.
So thank you, Riane. That was a wonderful speech you made. I think I particularly loved the way you spoke about the rise of domination, because I think that is very beautifully put, because that is what we are seeing. And somebody replied that before you actually go from the rise of domination to the partnership systems to create a new paradigm, that a major barrier you're going to have to face is fear. I think it was so rightly said that how do we overcome a barrier like fear? And I think I'd like to make 2 points. The first point is that we have to understand that domination is because of a patriarchal system, not a male system, but many women also believe in this patriarchal system. And it emanates from the unequal distribution of power to men and women. And however many laws we may create nationally and internationally and constitutionally to say all people are equal, they remain theoretical book-written things, because the problem with the domination is the dominant person is empowered with more power, and this causes disadvantages to the less dominant person through the abuse of that power, which is reinforced through the social constructs of our own myths and stereotypes created entirely by religion, by culture, by beliefs, which insulate the law that guarantees equality, because the law doesn't reach us. Before the law comes, we have all these thought processes. So I educate a lot of judges. I used to do it, and I'm still doing it around the world, and I do it in my own country. And I find that the best of human beings, when they're hearing a rape cases, it comes out, oh, so why was she walking out late at night? Unless they have been sensitized, unless they have been made to understand what is this inequitable distribution of power that allows and permits and reinforces the violence against women. So if we can understand that that is disadvantage, creates social barriers, creates economic barriers, which everyone works together to ultimately disempower women. And because of the disempowerment, there's always somebody who, when they have power, when they go to and they dominate, and you accepted that. You said there is a culture of domination. That what happens is they abuse that dominant power. And sometimes that abuse is ratified by society. And they say, oh, that's acceptable, tolerate it, don't talk about it. And you see it in judgments across the world in different ways. Now, if we as lawyers can communicate to others, use the international instruments, of course, but to talk about CEDAW, all these things, what does it say? There is no inferiority or superiority of man. In other words, men and women are equal, you say it in the law, but in the substantive equality, when you consider that, when you consider substantive equality, the reality of the man and woman, average man and woman in the street, you find that it doesn't operate the way the law promises. So we have to craft new remedies. We have to give good arguments. We have to recognize that vulnerability is not about men and women only. It's, about the gays, about inclusion. We have to understand the importance of all of us working together for minorities, for disabled, for the vulnerable in society, empower them through the law, educate the judge. I think this comes greatly in sensitivity and awareness, where you go on educating people, you talk about it. Everybody gets together through the religions, through the cultures, talk about this. Because without achieving that, without including inclusivity and diversity, in recognizing human beings as equally empowered, equally entitled to be whom they are, I think we are never going to reach that paradigm of partnerships. Or at least there's going to be a hard barrier, obstacles ahead. I don't know how you see what I'm saying, and even if I'm understood very clearly, I'm recovering from a cold and a cough.
I think we do understand.
Yeah.
And thank you. I want to point out something, though, Shirani, that power has itself needs to be reconceptualized. If you look at the title, The Chalice and the Blade, they're really two symbols of power. The blade, the power over. And it's very interesting that today we are hearing a popularized distinction between power over and power with. And I would add to power with, power to. Because if you look at the chalice and the blade, the power over, the power to take life, basically, is the power of the blade, right? And it's very appropriate for domination system. But there's another type of power, and it's the power of the chalice, which is the power to give life, to nurture life, to illuminate life, that has since antiquity really been symbolized by the chalice. And it is also the power to create. And I think that if we make that distinction, it helps us, because society is beginning to shift from seeing power over as the only type of power, and to see the importance of power to and power with, which is power as appropriate for domination, for partnership system rather than domination systems. So I just wanted to add that. And this said, I think obviously what I've been sharing with you shows that there are various levels of intervention, and that laws are important levels of intervention because they have an influence on changing the normative ideal.
Exactly.
And
Thank you.
that is what we have to focus on. And if we are talking about this campaign to end family violence, this consciousness somehow, that violence isn't just war or terrorism or crime, that it also takes place and that in families, and that this is where it starts. By the way, you might want to look at, and all you have to do is enter my name in Scientific American in Google. And I was interviewed recently in Scientific American, and the title of it is "How Do Families," or something like that, maintain authoritarian regimes.
Thank you very much. I'll do so. I will. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we're going to wrap up now, and just want to really thank you, Riane. It was a wonderful dialogue and very thought-provoking, and very enriching to our community. I'm planning to send out, along with the recording, the links to some of the the piece that you sent me, which I had sent out this morning, but along with some of the others, if I can find the Scientific American article, I'll send that as well so that the larger community has it. But thank you so much. And thank you to Kim for connecting us to Riane. Thank you to Bonnie for leading the conversation. And also just to mention that next month on May 10th, we're going to continue our series. And I feel like there's a real connection between Riane's presentation and the one that's coming up from Jenny Nadelsky. I don't know, Jenny, do you want to say one or two words about what you're going to talk about?
So it's really my new project, which I call Rethinking Constitutionalism from a more than human perspective. So it's taking the language of care and focusing on care for the earth, and how when we take that as foundational, how that has to restructure all of our thinking about institutions, about both intimate relationships and larger scale relationships, and the centrality of care. So.
Wonderful.
I want to thank you all really for your wonderful participation. And I'm counting on you. See, I mean, we always come back to this question, what can we do? And you are in a position to do a lot, every one of you, starting just with your own consciousness and sharing that with others in your sphere of influence. And for some of you, there's a large sphere of influence. So onward. I mean, it really is all about human agency, isn't it? So thank you. And I'm gonna go because I didn't think that this was gonna take an hour and a half, but it did.
Thank you, Riane.
Thank you so much.
Best to everyone.
Thank you.